Zhezhi is not written as a warrior. She is not driven by conquest, ambition, or the thrill of battle. Instead, Zhezhi represents something far more delicate, creation. Where many characters in Wuthering Waves confront the world through strength or strategy, Zhezhi approaches it through art. She observes, interprets, and then expresses what she sees through brush and ink. But in a world shaped by the lament, even art does not remain untouched by the extraordinary. For Zhezhi, painting is not just expression, it becomes power. Her art does not merely capture reality, it reshapes it, and that transformation turns a quiet artist into one of the more fascinating resonators in Jinzu. At first glance, Zhezhi appears soft-spoken and reserved. Her demeanor is calm and polite, often accompanied by a slight hesitation in her speech. She carries herself with the modesty of someone more comfortable observing the world than dominating it. This personality contrasts sharply with many of the stronger personalities within Jinzhou's ranks. Where others speak confidently and act decisively, Zhezhi tends to pause. She thinks before she speaks, she listens before she acts. This gives the impression of someone who is easily overwhelmed by louder personalities, but that impression hides an important truth. Zhezhi may not be loud, but she is perceptive. Artists often notice details that others overlook, and Zhezhi's entire way of interacting with the world revolves around observation. Before a painting can exist, the artist must first understand what they are seeing. Art is never a perfect copy of reality, it is interpretation. When an artist paints a landscape, they choose which elements to emphasize and which to soften. Light becomes brighter, shadows become deeper, movement becomes frozen in a moment of meaning. Zhezhi's abilities reflect this idea perfectly. Her resonance powers allow her paintings to manifest in the physical world. Ink constructs take shape, transforming imagination into something tangible. But these manifestations are not random, they reflect her perception of the world. In other words, Zhezhi's powers turn interpretation into action. What she paints becomes what exists. That makes her abilities uniquely tied to her mindset. The more clearly she understands something, the more precisely she can represent it. And the more precisely she represents it, the more powerful her creations become. Because Zhezhi appears shy, it is easy to mistake her gentleness for weakness. But courage does not always appear as loud defiance. Sometimes courage is the decision to keep creating in a world that has already been broken once before. The lament reshaped civilization. Cities like Jinzhou exist because people refuse to give up on rebuilding their culture and identity. Artists play an important role in that process. They remind people what beauty looks like. They remind people what peace once felt like. Zhezhi's work represents that restoration. Even when her powers manifest in combat, the foundation of those powers is still art. Creation remains at the center of everything she does, and choosing to create in a damaged world is a form of resilience. Ink is an interesting medium. Unlike stone or metal, it is fluid. It spreads across the page unpredictably. Artists must guide it carefully, controlling movement without completely restricting it. That balance mirrors Zhezhi's personality. She does not impose herself aggressively on situations. Instead, she moves gently, adapting to circumstances while subtly shaping them. Her combat animations reflect this philosophy. Rather than explosive bursts of force, her attacks flow like brushstrokes, movements connect smoothly, creating the sense that every action is part of a larger composition. Watching Zhezhi fight feels less like watching a battle and more like watching a painting come to life. Each motion adds another stroke to the canvas. Artists often see the world differently than others. Where most people see a battlefield, an artist might notice the contrast of light and shadow. Where others see chaos, an artist might see composition. Zhezhi embodies this perspective. Her connection to art means she constantly interprets her surroundings through creativity. Even dangerous situations can become inspiration. This does not mean she is unaware of danger, rather, it means she processes it differently. Instead of focusing purely on survival, she absorbs the experience and transforms it into something meaningful. That ability to reinterpret reality is central to both her personality and her powers. Zhezhi's shy nature also leaves room for character growth. Unlike characters who begin their stories already confident and powerful, Zhezhi starts from a more vulnerable position. She doubts herself, she hesitates, she sometimes worries about whether her contributions truly matter compared to those who fight more directly. But vulnerability often leads to the most compelling growth. As Zhezhi gains confidence in her abilities, her art becomes more than personal expression. It becomes a tool capable of protecting others, and that realization transforms her identity. She's no longer simply an observer of the world. She becomes an active participant in shaping it. One of the central themes in Wuthering Waves is reconstruction. After the devastation of the lament, humanity must rebuild not only its cities, but also its culture, identity, and sense of meaning. Characters approach this challenge in different ways. Soldiers defend territory, leaders organize society, researchers study the unknown. Artists, however, rebuild imagination. They remind people that life can still contain beauty. Zhezhi represents that role. Her art transforms imagination into something real, literally within the world of resonance. In doing so, she bridges the gap between creativity and survival. Zhezhi's greatest strength may not be her resonance abilities, it may be her perspective. People who see the world through creativity often discover solutions others miss. They combine ideas in unexpected ways. They reinterpret problems from entirely new angles. In a world filled with unpredictable phenomena, that flexibility becomes extremely valuable. While others rely on established methods, Zhezhi's imagination allows her to adapt. Her creativity becomes a form of strategy, and strategy often determines survival. In many ways, Zhezhi treats the world itself like a canvas. Every experience becomes part of a larger composition. Every moment adds another layer of meaning. Her powers simply make that metaphor literal. What she paints becomes reality. What she imagines gains form, and that ability carries a quiet philosophical implication. Reality itself may be more flexible than people assume. Sometimes all it takes to change the world is the courage to imagine something different. Zhezhi is not the loudest voice in Jinzhou, she is not the strongest fighter, and she's not the most confident personality, but she represents something deeply important: the power of creativity, the resilience of art, and the belief that even in a damaged world, beauty can still exist. Her brush does not simply record the world, it reshapes it. And in a universe where imagination can become reality, the quiet artist may hold more power than anyone realizes. Because sometimes the future is not built by those who fight the hardest. Sometimes it is painted by those who dare to imagine it first.